The sun beat down on the Atlanta pavement, creating shimmering waves of heat that danced above the asphalt. At Carter's premium car wash, an elderly man named Devin Knox methodically wiped down a silver SUV, his weathered hands moving with the precision that comes from decades of teaching discipline and dedication. The same hands that once guided young basketball players to greatness now guided soapsuds across metal surfaces. Life has a way of writing unexpected chapters, and Devin's story had taken turns he never imagined during his 30 years as a youth basketball coach. The economic downturn had hit hard, and his pension wasn't enough to cover the mounting medical bills from his wife's long battle with illness. So here he was, at 72, working under the scorching Georgia sun. But Devin never complained. The same spirit that made him an exceptional coach now made him an exceptional detailer. Every car that left his station gleamed like a trophy, a testament to his unwavering commitment to excellence. His colleagues at the car wash didn't know about his past life molding young athletes into stars. To them, he was just the quiet older gentleman who showed up early and stayed late, who always had a kind word for everyone. The radio played softly in the background, its music mixing with the sound of spray nozzles and vacuum cleaners. Devin hummed along, remembering the squeak of basketball shoes on hardwood floors and the rhythmic bounce of balls during practice. Those sounds used to be the soundtrack of his life, back when he coached at the local youth center. A massive black Escalade pulled into the car wash, its windows tinted dark as night. Devin straightened his back, grabbed his cleaning supplies, and approached the vehicle with his usual professional demeanor. Just another car. Just another day. The driver's door opened, and the world seemed to pause. A mountain of a man emerged, his presence immediately commanding attention. Even without his larger-than-life personality, Shaquille O'Neal was impossible to miss. But it wasn't his celebrity status that made Devin's hands tremble slightly. It was the flood of memories that rushed back. In his mind, he saw a gangly 14-year-old boy, all elbows and knees struggling to coordinate his rapidly growing body. He remembered the countless hours spent teaching that boy the fundamentals, the extra practice sessions, the talks about life that went far beyond basketball. Shaq stood there, his eyes hidden behind designer sunglasses, seemingly focused on his phone. Devin continued his work, his heart racing but his movements steady. He wasn't sure if he wanted to be recognized. After all, what would one of the greatest basketball players of all time think of his former mentor working at a car wash? But as Devin moved around the vehicle, carefully applying soap to the gleaming black surface, a deep voice broke through the ambient noise of the car wash. "Hold up. Coach Knox, is that really you?" The words hung in the air like a basketball. At the apex of its arc, Devin looked up, meeting Shaq's now removed sunglasses, seeing in those eyes the same spark of recognition, the same warmth that had been there decades ago. "Hello, Shaquille," Devin said softly, his voice carrying the weight of years unspoken. What happened next would become the stuff of local legend. The giant of a man, the NBA champion, the multimedia superstar moved forward and wrapped his former coach in an embrace that seemed to bridge the years between them. Other customers stopped to stare. Phones were raised to capture the moment. But for these two men, the world had narrowed to this single point of connection. "Coach, what are you doing here?" Shaq's voice carried a mix of joy and concern. "Why didn't you ever reach out?" Devin straightened his uniform, pride and dignity evident in his bearing. "Life takes its turns, Shaquille. We all do what we must." But Shaq wasn't having it. The boy who had learned about perseverance and dignity from this very man now stood as a testament to those lessons. He pulled out his phone, made a few calls, his voice carrying authority and purpose. "Not anymore, coach. Not anymore." What followed was a whirlwind of activity. Shaq insisted on hearing everything about the medical bills, the pension that fell short, the quiet dignity with which Devin had faced his challenges. With each detail, the basketball legend's expression grew more determined. The other workers gathered at a respectful distance, watching as history and humanity unfolded before them. They saw their quiet colleague transform in their eyes, his story emerging like a photograph in developing solution. The coach who had believed in a young Shaquille O'Neal, who had helped lay the foundation for greatness, had been here among them all along. Shaq's voice carried across the car wash as he made call after call. "We're going to make this right, coach. You took care of me when I was just a kid with dreams. Now it's my turn." As the sun continued its arc across the Atlanta sky, plans were made, promises were given, and lives were changed. But perhaps the most powerful moment came when Shaq turned to address the small crowd that had gathered. "See this man?" he said, his voice thick with emotion. "He taught me that greatness isn't just about what you can do on the court. It's about dignity, about doing things right even when no one's watching. He never gave up on me, and I'm not giving up on him." Devin stood there, his uniform still damp from his work, his eyes bright with unshed tears. The lessons he had taught had come full circle. The seeds of character he had planted had grown into something magnificent, something that now offered shade and shelter to him in his time of need. As the day drew to a close, Shaq insisted on helping Devin clean his last few cars, much to the amazement of the customers. Here was one of basketball's greatest legends, sleeve rolled up, learning once again from his old coach how to detail a car with precision and care. The story could have ended there with a heartwarming reunion and a promise of help. But Shaq had bigger plans. As he and Devin walked to the office to sort out the paperwork for what would come next, the basketball star turned to his mentor. "Coach, remember what you always told us? About how life is like a full-court press. It's not about one big play. It's about consistent effort and being there for your teammates." Devin nodded, remembering countless practice sessions where he had instilled these principles. "Well, coach, you've been running a full-court press your whole life. Now it's time to let your team help run the play." As they stepped into the office, the future began to take shape. But more than the practical changes that were coming, something profound had happened that day at Carter's premium car wash. A circle had been completed. A lesson about dignity and perseverance had been both taught and learned, and the true meaning of success had been demonstrated not in championships or wealth, but in the enduring bond between a coach and his former player. The sun set on Atlanta, casting long shadows across the car wash. But for Devin Knox, it felt more like a sunrise. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but for now, he stood in the growing darkness, watching as Shaq's Escalade pulled away, carrying with it the promise of change and the proof that sometimes life's greatest victories happen far from any basketball court. The next morning dawned with a different energy at Carter's premium car wash. Word had spread quickly about yesterday's events, and local news vans lined the street, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky like metal sunflowers. But Devin Knox arrived at his usual time, 6:45 a.m., dressed in his work uniform, ready to start his shift. The owner, Roland Easton, met him at the door. "Knox, you don't have to work today. After what happened yesterday—" "Yes, sir, I do," Devin replied, adjusting his name tag. "Until paperwork is signed and things are official, I'm still your employee, and I finish what I start." That quiet dignity, that unshakable commitment to duty, was exactly what had made him such an extraordinary coach all those years ago. As he began his morning routine, checking supplies and preparing his station, his mind drifted back to the years when he first met young Shaquille O'Neal. It had been a sweltering summer day, much like yesterday. The youth center's air conditioning was struggling against the heat, and the sound of basketballs echoing off the walls filled the small gym. That's when a towering teenager walked in, already carrying the weight of expectations on his broad shoulders. "You're late," Devin had said, not looking up from his clipboard. "Sorry, sir, the bus was running behind. Tomorrow, catch an earlier bus." That simple exchange had set the tone for their relationship. No excuses, no special treatment, just clear expectations and unwavering support. Now, decades later, as Devin wiped down a minivan's windows, he could still hear the rhythmic bounce of those practice sessions. A black Tesla pulled into his station, its driver clearly hoping to catch a glimpse of yesterday's excitement. The woman behind the wheel kept glancing at him, her phone ready to capture any celebrity appearances. But Devin simply went about his work with the same meticulous care he always showed. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Another message from Shaq. Since yesterday, his former student had been sending him updates about the plans being put into motion. A foundation was being established, paperwork was being filed, and a new chapter was about to begin. But for now, Devin focused on the task at hand, his movements precise and purposeful. Each swipe of his cleaning cloth carried the same attention to detail he once demanded from his players during drills. Around mid-morning, a familiar figure appeared at the car wash. Beckett Shaw, now a successful local business owner, had been another one of Devin's former players, not a superstar like Shaq, but a solid player who had learned valuable life lessons on the court. "Coach Knox," Beckett called out, his voice carrying across the lot. "I saw the news. I can't believe you've been here all this time." Devin looked up, recognizing immediately the boy who had struggled with his confidence until finding his rhythm in the game. "Beckett, you grew up good." They embraced, and Beckett pulled out his phone, showing Devin photos of his family, his business, his life. "Everything I am, coach, started with what you taught us, not just about basketball, about life." As they talked, more former players began showing up. Word had spread through old team photos and social media posts. By lunchtime, the car wash had become an impromptu reunion of sorts. Elias Kane, now a high school teacher, Roman Vale, a police officer, Cyrus Bellamy, who ran a youth mentoring program. Each carried their own memories of the lessons learned under Coach Knox's guidance. They shared stories with the gathering crowd and news reporters about extra practice sessions, about tough love and unwavering support, about a man who saw potential in them when others didn't. "Remember the championship game against Riverside?" Elias asked, his eyes bright with memory. "Down by 12 in the fourth quarter?" Devin nodded, still focused on his work, even as he listened. "You boys dug deep that day, because you taught us how," Roman added. "You said it wasn't about the scoreboard, it was about who we were becoming." As the day progressed, more pieces of the past fell into place. The youth center where Devin had coached had closed years ago, another victim of budget cuts and changing times. The neighborhood had transformed, but the impact of those years continued to ripple through lives. Around 2 o'clock, Shaq's Escalade returned, but this time he wasn't alone. With him was Ren Holloway, Devin's former assistant coach, now walking with a cane, but still carrying the same sharp wit that had complemented Devin's coaching style. "You stubborn old mule," Ren said, his voice gruff with emotion. "All these years, working in the sun when you should have been enjoying retirement." Devin straightened up from the car he was detailing. "Work is dignity, old friend. You taught me that." The two old coaches stood there, decades of shared history between them, while their former players gathered around. The scene caught the attention of every customer and employee, not because of Shaq's celebrity, but because of the palpable weight of legacy and love that filled the air. Shaq stepped forward, his presence commanding, but his voice gentle. "Coach, everything's ready. The foundation's set up. We're going to create a new youth program, and we need you to lead it." The big man pulled out a folder, opening it to reveal the paperwork. The Devin Knox Youth Development Program. Not just a basketball program, but a comprehensive initiative to support young people through sports, education, and mentorship. You always said it wasn't about creating basketball players, Shaq continued. It was about creating good people who happened to play basketball. Devin's hands trembled slightly as he looked at the documents. His legacy, which he thought had ended with the closure of the youth center, was about to find new life. But true to his character, his first question was about his current obligations. "Mr. Easton," he called to his boss, "I'll need to give proper notice." Roland stepped forward, wiping away tears. "Coach Knox, consider this your graduation day. Though I wish I'd known sooner who I had working for me all this time." The gathered crowd broke into applause, but Devin raised his hand for quiet. "There's still 3 cars in line," he said. "Let me finish my shift." That simple statement, more than any grand gesture, exemplified everything he had taught his players about responsibility and finishing what you start. Shaq and the others watched as their former coach completed his final details with the same care he had shown in his first. As the sun began to set on his last day at Carter's premium car wash, Devin Knox stood surrounded by the fruits of his labor, not the gleaming cars, but the shining examples of character he had helped build. Each former player represented a life touched, a lesson learned, a potential realized. Shaq placed a hand on his old coach's shoulder. "Ready to start your next chapter, coach?" Devin looked around at the faces of his former players, at the legacy of love and respect that had brought them all together on this day. "Just remember," he said, his voice carrying the weight of wisdom, "what I always taught you boys. It's not about where you start, it's about how you finish." As they walked toward the parking lot, leaving behind the scene of this unexpected reunion, the gathered crowd witnessed something profound. They saw not just a heartwarming story of recognition and reward, but a testament to the enduring impact of quiet dignity, unwavering principles, and the power of believing in others. The sun set on Devin's last day at the car wash, but it would rise tomorrow on a new chapter, one where the lessons he had taught through basketball would find new life, touching new generations. And it all started because a giant of the game never forgot the giant of a man who helped him become who he was. A week after the car wash reunion, Devin Knox stood in front of the mirror in his modest apartment, adjusting a tie he hadn't worn in years. The morning news played quietly in the background, still running stories about the viral video of his reunion with Shaq. His phone kept buzzing with messages from former players who had seen the coverage and wanted to reconnect. But Devin's mind was on his wife's photograph on the dresser. Celeste Quinn had been gone for 3 years now, her medical bills still haunting their shared dreams. "Well, my love," he whispered to the image, "looks like life still has some surprises left." The drive to the Foundation's temporary offices took him through his old neighborhood. The youth center where he'd once coached was now a dollar store, its faded brick walls still showing ghost marks where basketball hoops had once hung. He pulled into the parking lot, remembering the countless evenings when this asphalt had been filled with kids dreaming of their future. Inside the renovated office building, he found Shaq waiting with a team of professionals, including Lyra Stone, a prominent youth development expert, and Eden Locke, an education specialist. The conference room walls were covered with plans and proposals. "Coach," Shaq greeted him, standing up from a chair that seemed too small for his frame. "Ready to build something special?" The meeting that followed wasn't just about basketball. The Devin Knox Youth Development Program would be comprehensive, combining sports, education, mentorship, and community support. As they discussed the details, Devin's coaching instincts kicked in. "These kids need more than just a place to play," he said, pointing to the plans. "They need what my players had: structure, guidance, someone who believes in them even when they don't believe in themselves." Lyra nodded, making notes. That's exactly why we need your experience, Mr. Knox. You've already proven this model works. The proof was in the pudding, as they say. Throughout the day, more former players arrived to volunteer their support. Arlo Bennett, now a successful architect, offered to help design the new facility. Callum Ford, a financial advisor, wanted to teach kids about money management. Each brought not just their professional skills, but the living testimony of Devin's impact. During a break, Shaq pulled his old coach aside. "There's something else you need to see," he said, leading Devin to a smaller office. Inside, spread across a table, were hundreds of letters and social media messages. People sharing stories of how Coach Knox had changed their lives. Not just the players he'd coached, but their families, friends, even opponents from other teams. "Your ripple effect, Coach," Shaq said softly. "All these lives you touched without even knowing it." Devin picked up one of the letters, his hands trembling slightly as he read. It was from Nova Wren, whose brother had played for him 20 years ago. She wrote about how her brother, struggling with depression, had found purpose and strength through Coach Knox's guidance. "I remember him," Devin said quietly. "Always stayed late after practice, helping put away the equipment. Never knew he was going through such a tough time. The afternoon brought more meetings, more planning, but also more memories. Every detail of the new program was filtered through the lens of Devin's experience and wisdom. When discussing discipline, policies, he shared stories of how he'd handled challenging players. When talking about academic support, he recalled study sessions he'd organized in the gym. As evening approached, Shaq insisted on driving Devin home. The car ride was quiet at first, both men lost in thought. Then Shaq spoke, his voice uncharacteristically. "Soft. You know, Coach, there's something I never told you. That day you kicked me out of practice for showing up late?" Devin nodded, remembering. "You came back the next day, 15 minutes early." "Yeah, but you don't know why. I was angry at first, ready to quit. But when I got home, my mama sat me down and said something I never forgot. She said, 'That man isn't just teaching you basketball. He's teaching you how to be somebody worth being.'" They pulled up to Devin's apartment building, but neither made a move to get out. The street lights were just coming on, casting long shadows across the dashboard. "Your mama was a wise woman," Devin said finally. "She was. And she was right about you. Every success I've had, every business deal, every championship, it all started with the lessons you taught me. Not just about showing up on time, but about showing up right." The next morning, Devin arrived at the temporary office before anyone else. He stood at the window, watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of promise. One by one, his team arrived. Not just the professionals hired by the foundation, but volunteers, former players, community members touched by his legacy. Ivy Sinclair, a local journalist who'd covered youth sports for decades, came by to interview him. But instead of focusing on the celebrity angle of his reunion with Shaq, she wanted to know about his coaching philosophy. "It was never about basketball," he explained, his voice carrying the weight of years of experience. "The game was just a tool. What we were really building was character. Every drill, every play, every victory or defeat, they were all lessons about life." As he spoke, his words were being transmitted through the office's sound system. In the main workspace, people stopped what they were doing to listen. They heard him talk about tough love and second chances, about seeing potential in kids others had written off, about the importance of dignity in all things. By mid-morning, the office was buzzing with activity. Tessa Greer, a community organizer, was coordinating with local schools. Hazel Maddox was developing a mentorship program. Every aspect of the foundation was taking shape, infused with the principles Devin had lived by. During lunch, a surprise visitor arrived. Bryn Carter, one of the few girls Devin had coached when the youth center briefly ran a co-ed program, now a successful college basketball coach herself. "I've been running my program on your playbook, coach," she said, pulling out a worn notebook. "Not the X's and O's, but the life lessons, the things you taught us about perseverance, about lifting each other up, about playing the long game." The afternoon brought a visit to potential sites for the new facility. As they toured empty buildings and vacant lots, Devin saw not what was, but what could be. In an abandoned warehouse, he pointed out where classrooms could go, where the gym would be, where kids could gather to do homework or just talk. "Every space needs to serve multiple purposes," he explained to the architects. "Just like every drill we ran served multiple lessons." The day ended with a community meeting. Local residents, curious about the foundation, came to hear about the plans. But what they really wanted to hear were stories about Coach Knox. One by one, former players stood up to share their memories, but it wasn't just about basketball victories or championship games. They talked about life lessons learned, about moments of kindness, about a man who saw their potential even when they couldn't see it themselves. As Devin listened, he realized that his legacy wasn't just in the lives he'd touched directly, but in how those lives had gone on to touch others. His former players had become coaches, mentors, parents, each carrying forward the lessons they'd learned. The meeting ran late into the evening, but nobody wanted to leave. There was a sense that they were part of something special, something that transcended sports or education or community service. They were part of a legacy of love, dignity, and unwavering belief in human potential. As the last people filed out, Shaq found Devin standing alone in the conference room, looking at the plans spread across the tables. "What are you thinking?" "Coach," Devin touched one of the drawings gently, "I'm thinking about all the kids who'll come through these doors. Kids like you were, like all my players were. Kids who need someone to believe in them." "And they'll have that," Shaq said, "because your legacy isn't just about the past anymore. It's about the future we're building." Devin nodded, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "You know what I always say." And together, they finished the phrase that had guided so many young lives. "It's not about where you start, it's about how you finish." As they left the office that night, the city lights twinkled like stars, each one representing a life touched, a lesson learned, a dream made possible. The car wash might have been where this chapter began, but it was far from where the story would end. 2 months into the foundation's development, Devin Knox stood in the gutted interior of what would become their permanent home. The former warehouse echoed with the sounds of construction, but in his mind, he could already hear the bounce of basketballs and the shuffle of young feet. Isla Vance, the project manager, walked beside him, hard hat in place, reviewing plans on her tablet. "We're ahead of schedule on the gymnasium renovation," she reported, "but we've hit a snag with the classroom wing." Devin ran his hand along a newly framed wall. "Tell me." "Cost overruns. The electrical system needs more work than we thought. We're looking at an additional 100,000 to do it right." Before concern could settle in, a familiar voice boomed through the space. "Whatever it costs, we'll handle it." Shaq ducked through a doorway, his own hard hat perched somewhat comically on his head. "This building needs to be as solid as the foundation's principles." But Devin raised his hand, a gesture his former players knew well, the one that meant, "Wait, think it through." "We need to be smart about this," he said. "Every dollar we spend here is a dollar we can't spend on the kids." This wisdom, this careful consideration of long-term impact over quick fixes, was exactly why the foundation needed him. While Shaq had the resources and the vision, Devin had the experience of making the most of limited means. As they discussed alternatives, Aurora James, the foundation's financial director, joined them with some unexpected news. "The community's organizing a fundraiser," she announced, her eyes bright with excitement. "Spontaneously, former players, local businesses, families, They're all coming together. The news spread quickly through the construction site. Elodie Carr, their community liaison, began receiving calls from people wanting to help. Local contractors offered discounted services. Former players organized basketball clinics to raise funds. The project that had started with one viral moment was becoming a community movement. Later that afternoon, Devin sat in the temporary office, reviewing applications for the foundation's staff positions. Each resume told a story, but he was looking beyond qualifications. He remembered how he used to choose his team captains, not just by skill, but by character. A knock at his door revealed Dahlia Rhodes, one of his former players' parents. 20 years ago, she'd been a single mother working 2 jobs, relying on the youth center to keep her son engaged and safe after school. "Coach Knox," she said, her voice warm with memory. "I've been following everything that's happening. I had to come." She pulled out an old photograph, her son's team picture from 1999. Devin remembered that team well. They hadn't won many games, but every player had graduated high school and gone to college. "You didn't just coach basketball," Dahlia said, touching the photograph gently. "You coached life, and not just for the kids, for us parents too. The way you believed in our children taught us to believe in them as well." Their conversation was interrupted by commotion from the main office. Freya Bell, their youth program coordinator, rushed in. "Coach, you need to see this." The local news was running a story about the foundation, but it wasn't about Shaq or the viral moment at the Carwash. Instead, they were interviewing community members about Coach Knox's impact over the years. There was Juniper Cross, now a pediatrician, talking about how Coach Knox had helped her brother through a learning disability. Ophelia Blair, a teacher, sharing how his mentorship had inspired her career choice. One by one, stories emerged of quiet moments of guidance, of stern but loving wisdom, of unwavering support when it mattered most. As they watched, Shaq placed a hand on his old coach's shoulder. "See what you built? And you thought you were just teaching basketball." The next morning brought a surprise visitor to the construction site. Delilah Wynn, now in her 70s, had been the youth center's secretary during Devin's early coaching years. She came bearing boxes of old records, photographs, and newspaper clippings she'd saved. "Couldn't let all this history get lost," she said as they went through the materials together. Each item told a story: a handwritten practice schedule from 1985, a letter from a parent thanking Coach Knox for helping their child regain confidence, tournament brackets, team rosters, and countless photographs of young faces full of hope and determination. Serafina Vale, their archive coordinator, began organizing the materials for the Foundation's planned museum section. "This isn't just memorabilia," she observed. "This is a roadmap of how to change lives." Mid-afternoon brought another meeting about the construction challenges, but this time solutions came from unexpected places. Iris Lennox, whose father had played for Coach Knox, was now an electrical engineer. She volunteered to redesign the systems to be more cost-effective while maintaining quality. As they worked through the problems, Devin's coaching instincts emerged in a different context. He listened more than he spoke, asked questions that made people think deeper, and kept everyone focused on their shared goal, just as he had done with his teams. The day's biggest moment came when they visited the site of the old youth center. The building's new owners had agreed to let them salvage anything of sentimental value before their planned renovation. In the dusty interior, Devin found something that stopped him in his tracks: his old office door, still bearing the nameplate, and the list of Coach Knox's rules for life that had hung there for decades. Show up early, stay late, no excuses, only solutions. Your character is your most valuable possession. Lift others as you climb. Today's preparation is tomorrow's success. Shaq read the rules aloud, his voice thick with emotion. These aren't just going on display in the museum. he declared. They're going to be the foundation's core principles. As evening approached, the construction site hosted an impromptu gathering. Workers, staff, volunteers, and community members shared pizza and stories. The conversation flowed between past and future, between memories and dreams. Maisie Knox, Devin's niece, arrived with more family photos and stories. She shared tales of holiday gatherings where Uncle Devin would have players who couldn't go home for Christmas, of late-night phone calls from kids in trouble, of quiet acts of kindness that had shaped countless lives. Through it all, Devin listened, more than he spoke. He watched the interactions, saw new connections forming, witnessed his life's work taking new shape. The foundation wasn't just about preserving his legacy. It was about extending it, growing it, allowing it to evolve with new generations. As the sun set, casting long shadows through the building's skeletal frame, Zara Monroe, their youngest. "Volunteer?" asked Coach Knox, a question that made everyone stop and listen. "How did you know? Back then, with all those kids, how did you know what they needed?" Devin was quiet for a moment, looking out through the window frames to the city beyond. "I didn't always know," he admitted, "but I knew this. Every child needs someone who won't give up on them, someone who sees their potential even when they can't see it themselves. Sometimes that's enough to change a life." The truth of his words hung in the air, resonating with everyone present. Each person there had been touched by that philosophy, either directly or through its ripple effects through the community. As people began to leave, Shaq found his old coach standing in what would become the main gymnasium. "Thinking about your first team, coach?" "Thinking about my next one," Devin replied, his eyes focused on the future. "All these people, all these dreams and plans, they're my team now. And just like back then, our success won't be measured by wins and losses, but by lives changed." The construction lights cast bright pools in the growing darkness, illuminating the framework of what was to come. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new lives to touch. But for now, in this moment, the legacy of a humble coach who had never sought recognition was taking physical form, brick by brick, dream by dream. The morning of the foundation's grand opening dawned clear and bright. Devin Knox stood in front of his bathroom mirror, just as he had on his last day at the car wash, but this time his reflection told a different story. His tie was new, a gift from Shaq, and his eyes carried a spark that had been reignited by the events of the past few months. Outside the newly completed Devin Knox Youth Development Center, a crowd was already gathering. Naomi West, the event coordinator, directed volunteers as they arranged chairs and hung banners. The building gleamed in the morning sun, its modern facade incorporating elements of the old youth center's design. A bridge between past and future. Calla Rivers, one of the foundation's first hired teachers, was setting up the classroom wing. Each room had been designed with Coach Knox's philosophy in mind. Flexible spaces that could serve multiple purposes, just like his basketball drills had always taught multiple lessons. "Coach," called out Esme Lane, rushing through the hallway with clipboard in hand. "The first tour group is here early." Devin walked to the main entrance, where he found a group of middle school students, wide-eyed and uncertain, just like so many young players he'd coached over the years. Their teacher, Lilith Moore, had been one of his former players' younger sisters. "Welcome," he said, his voice carrying the same warmth it had held in countless practice sessions. "Let me show you what we're building here." As he led them through the facility, each space told a story. The main gymnasium featured a wall of photographs, decades of teams, games, and moments that had shaped lives. The Academic Support Center displayed Coach Knox's rules for life, now rendered in elegant metalwork. Vienna York, the foundation's counselor, was setting up her office as they passed. Through the open door, the students could See comfortable seating arranged in a circle, a setup reminiscent of how Coach Knox used to conduct team meetings. In the technology lab, Nora Winslow was installing the final pieces of equipment. The room represented everything the old youth center couldn't provide, but the principles remained the same, creating opportunities for young people to grow and learn. As the morning progressed, more visitors arrived. Former players, now with children of their own, walked through the halls with tears in their eyes. Community members who had contributed to the fundraising saw their investments transformed into reality. Talia Monroe, a local historian, was documenting everything for the city archives. "This isn't just a building," she observed, watching the interactions. "It's a testament to how one person's dedication can transform a community." Around noon, Shaq arrived with a surprise, a bus full of NBA players, all eager to support the foundation's launch. But what touched Devin most was how they listened, really listened, as he explained his coaching philosophy. "Basketball was never the end goal," he told them in the gymnasium. "It was the tool we used to build character, to teach life lessons, to show these kids they were capable of more than they imagined." As he spoke, Danica Reed, one of his earliest players who now ran a successful business, stepped forward. "Coach, remember what you told me when I missed that game-winning shot in the state semifinals?" Devin smiled. "I told you that champions aren't defined by the shots they make or miss, but by how they handle both. That lesson carried me through every business challenge I've ever faced," she said, her voice thick with emotion. The afternoon brought more surprises. Morgan Vale arrived with a group of Carwash employees from Carter's Premium, where Devin's journey had taken its unexpected turn. They presented him with a plaque, Honorary Master Detailer, celebrating how he had brought the same dedication to that job as he had to coaching. Avery Stone, a local city council member, presented a proclamation declaring it Coach Devin. Knox Day in Atlanta, but what meant more to Devin were the stories people kept sharing, small moments he had forgotten, but that had changed lives in profound ways. As the opening ceremony approached, Jordan Wells, the Foundation's program director, gathered everyone in the main gymnasium. The space was packed. Former players, current students, community members, and media all waiting for the official launch. Shaq took the podium first, but his usual larger-than-life personality was subdued by emotion. "Sometimes," he began, "the biggest impacts come from the quietest sources. Coach Knox never sought the spotlight. He just showed up every day, believing in us, pushing us to be better, not just as players, but as people." When it was Devin's turn to speak, he looked out at the gathered faces, young and old, familiar and new, all connected by the threads of his influence. But true to his character, he kept his remarks brief and focused on the future. "This building, these programs, they're not about me," he said. "They're about every young person who walks through these doors, searching for direction, for support, for someone to believe in them. That's what we're really building here. A place where dreams can take root and grow." The ceremony concluded with a surprise video compilation. Drew Maddox, a filmmaker whose father had played for Coach Knox, had interviewed hundreds of people touched by Devin's work. The resulting documentary showed the ripple effect of one man's dedication, how lessons learned on a basketball court had shaped businesses, families, and communities. As evening approached, most of the crowd had dispersed, but the building remained alive with purpose. In the academic center, Peyton Hale was already tutoring a group of students. In the gym, Devin Gray led a basketball clinic. Every space hummed with the energy of new beginnings. Devin walked the halls one last time that day, pausing in each room to take it all in. In the museum section, he found Shaq standing before a display case containing his old whistle and clipboard. "No, Coach," Shaq said quietly. "When I found you at that car wash, I thought I was going to be the one helping you. But the truth is, you're still teaching us, still showing us what it means to live with purpose. Devin touched the glass case gently. Every coach knows this truth. The game is just the beginning. It's what happens after the final buzzer that really matters. As they walked toward the exit, the setting sun cast long shadows through the gymnasium windows, reminiscent of those late practice sessions years ago. But now, instead of echoing with the sound of bouncing balls, the building held the promise of countless future impacts. Outside, a group of kids was playing basketball on the new outdoor court, their laughter carrying through the evening air. Devin and Shaq stood watching them, both seeing the past and future intertwined in their play. "Ready for tomorrow, coach?" Shaq asked. Devin nodded, his eyes on the young players. "Always ready, because tomorrow's another chance to make a difference." As they turned to leave, one of the kids called out, "Coach Knox, will you show us that defensive drill you were talking about earlier?" Without hesitation, Devin handed his jacket to Shaq and walked onto the court. Some things never change, and the joy of teaching, of sharing knowledge, of helping young people grow was as fresh now as it had been decades ago. The first day was ending, but the real story was just beginning. The Devin Knox Youth Development Center stood as a testament not just to one man's impact, but to the enduring power of dedication, dignity, and unwavering belief in human potential. From a chance encounter at a car wash had grown something extraordinary, a legacy not of championships won, but of lives transformed. 1 year after the grand opening, Devin Knox sat in his office at the Youth Development Center, reviewing applications for their expanded program. The morning sun streamed through windows that overlooked the bustling courtyard where kids were already arriving for the day's activities. His old whistle hung on a hook nearby, no longer used for basketball drills, but serving as a reminder of where this journey began. The center had exceeded everyone's expectations. What started as a viral moment at a car wash had blossomed into something extraordinary. But for Devin, the real success wasn't in the numbers, it was in the stories that unfolded within these walls every day. A knock at his door revealed Rowan, Blair, one of their first student participants, now peer mentor to younger kids. "Coach Knox, can I talk to you about something?" The way Rowan stood in the doorway, shifting nervously from foot to foot, reminded Devin of countless similar moments over his coaching career. He gestured to the chair across from his desk, the same open, attentive posture he'd maintained for decades. "My dad lost his job last week," Rowan said quietly. "I was thinking maybe I should quit school, try to help out." Before Devin could respond, Shaq's unmistakable frame filled the doorway. He'd been making one of his regular visits to the center, often unannounced, always eager to stay connected with what he considered his most important project. "Mind if I sit in on this, coach?" Shaq asked, reading the situation with the same court awareness that had made him a basketball legend. What followed wasn't just a conversation about hardship and responsibility. It was Coach Knox's philosophy in action. Together, they worked out a plan. The foundation would provide Rowan with a paid internship, allowing him to help his family while staying in school. More importantly, they helped him see beyond the immediate crisis to the bigger picture. "Remember what I always say," Devin told him, "life is like a full-court press." "It's not about one big play," Rowan finished, managing a smile. "It's about consistent effort and being there for your teammates." Later that morning, during the center's daily community meeting, Phoenix Wilder, their outreach coordinator, shared some remarkable statistics. In just 1 year, the center had served over 1,000 young people, provided academic support that raised local graduation rates, and become a model for similar programs across the country. But it was the personal stories that really told the tale. Camden Holt stood up to share how the center had helped him overcome his reading difficulties. Lennox Ford spoke about finding direction through the mentorship program. Each story echoed the same themes Devin had fostered throughout his coaching career: perseverance, dignity, and the power of believing in oneself. As the meeting concluded, Knox Maddox, a local business owner, announced a new scholarship program inspired by Coach Knox's impact. "When I was on his team 20 years ago," Knox explained, "Coach taught us that success isn't just about what you achieve, it's about what you give back." The afternoon brought a special event: the installation of the final piece in the center's legacy wall. Sterling Dean, a renowned artist whose sister had played for Coach Knox, had created a mural that captured the essence of Devin's journey. It showed not just basketball scenes, but moments of mentorship, learning, and growth. As people gathered to view the mural, Cassian Hale, one of Devin's earliest players, now grey at the temples, shared a story that brought tears to many eyes. "Back in '85, I was headed down a dangerous path," he began. "One day, Coach Knox caught me behind the gym, about to make a choice that would have ruined my life. Instead of reporting me or kicking me off the team, he sat with me for hours, listening, talking, helping me see a different future for myself." Sienna Blake, the center's chief counselor, nodded in recognition. "That's still his approach today. Every kid who comes through these doors gets that same attention, that same belief in their potential." The day's biggest surprise came when Aurora James arrived with a film crew from a major documentary series. They were working on a piece about transformative educators, and Coach Knox's story had caught their attention. But true to his nature, Devin redirected their focus. "If you want to tell this story," he told them, "tell it through the lives that have been changed. Not just by me, but by every person who believed in giving young people a chance." As the film crew set up interviews, Freya Bell brought in a group of elementary school students for their first visit to the center. Watching them explore the space, eyes wide with wonder, Devin saw echoes of every team he'd ever coached. Dahlia Rhodes, who'd been organizing the center's photo archives, captured the moment perfectly. "Look at their faces, Coach. They're seeing possibilities they never knew existed, just like we did all those years ago." The late afternoon brought an impromptu basketball game in the gymnasium. Current students, former players, and even Shaq himself joined in. But it wasn't the level of play that made the game special. It was how it embodied everything the center stood for. Older players mentored younger ones. Mistakes were met with encouragement, not criticism. Every player, regardless of skill level, had a role to play. The game wasn't about winning. It was about growing, learning, and supporting each other. As evening approached, Devin found himself back in his office, looking at a new addition to his wall, a simple frame containing his old car wash name. Tag. Juniper Cross had found it while organizing memorabilia and had it mounted alongside his coaching awards. Shaq joined him, both men reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. "You know what I've realized, Coach?" Shaq said, his voice unusually contemplative. "That car wash job, it wasn't a detour in your story. It was just another way you were teaching us." Devin raised an eyebrow, questioning. "Think about it," Shaq continued. "Even there, you showed the same dignity, the same dedication to doing things right. You were still coaching, still showing by example what character means." Their conversation was interrupted by sounds of laughter from the courtyard. A group of teens was helping younger kids with their homework, the same way Devin had once organized study sessions for his players. "You know what's really special about this place?" Devin said, watching the scene below. "It's not just about what we give these kids. It's about what they give each other. Every person who walks through those doors becomes part of something bigger than themselves." As the day drew to a close, the center hosted a community dinner, a monthly tradition that brought together students, families, staff, and volunteers. The cafeteria buzzed with conversation, stories, and laughter. Nova Wren, now heading the center's family support program, stood to make an announcement. The foundation was expanding, opening 2 new locations in other cities. Coach Knox's model. of mentorship and support would soon touch even more lives. But the evening's most powerful moment came when Devin himself stood to speak. He rarely made speeches, preferring to let his actions convey his message. Tonight was different. A year ago, he began, I was detailing cars thinking my time of making a difference was over. I was wrong, not just about my own journey, but about how life works. Every moment, every interaction, every choice we make has the potential to impact others. He paused, looking around the room at faces young and old, all connected by the threads of his influence. This center isn't about basketball or education or even mentorship, though we do all those things. It's about believing in each other. It's about seeing the potential in every person who walks through those doors. It's about understanding that every life has value, every story matters, and every person deserves someone who won't give up on them. As his words settled over the room, Shaq stood and began to applaud, followed by everyone present. But Devin raised his hand, that familiar gesture that had quieted countless gymnasiums over the years. The work isn't finished, he said simply. Tomorrow, new kids will walk through those doors. They'll carry their own dreams, their own struggles, their own potential. Our job is to be ready for them. Because in the end, it's not about where you start, and the room finished with him. It's about how you finish. The sun had set by the time the last person left the center. Devin stood in the darkened gymnasium, the space quiet but full of echoes, not just of basketballs and squeaking sneakers, but of lives touched, lessons learned, and dreams made possible. From a chance encounter at a car wash had grown something extraordinary, not just a building or a program, but a living testament to the power of dedication, dignity, and unwavering belief in human potential. The Devin Knox Youth Development Center stood as proof that sometimes life's greatest victories happen far from any scoreboard, in the quiet moments when one person believes in another enough to help them believe in themselves.